3 days after we buried my son, his business partner stood in the doorway of my cabin and told me I had 72 hours to get out. I looked at him, at his pressed suit jacket that seemed too expensive for a Thursday morning in Montana, at the leather folder tucked under his arm, at the way he wouldn't quite meet my eyes. "Thomas," Marcus said, and his voice had that careful softness people use when they think you're too fragile to handle the truth. "I know this is difficult timing, but we need to discuss the property situation." I'd been packing David's things. His flannel shirt still smelled like wood smoke and coffee. His hiking boots sat by the door where he'd left them 3 weeks ago, before the accident that wasn't an accident, before the funeral with 37 people and a closed casket, before Marcus became the only person who mattered in my son's business affairs. "What property situation?" I asked. Marcus stepped inside without being invited. He'd been here before, of course, dozens of times over the past 2 years, ever since David brought him up as a partner in the software startup. They'd sit at this same kitchen table, laptops open, talking about venture capital and market disruption in terms I never fully understood. David had been so excited. "Dad," he'd said, "Marcus knows everyone in Seattle. He's got connections to real money." I'd smiled and nodded and made them coffee, because that's what fathers do. We support our children's dreams even when we don't understand them. "The cabin," Marcus said. He set the folder on the table. "I need you to look at these documents." I opened the folder. Legal papers. A lot of them. The words blurred together at first. Transfer of deed. Collateral agreement. My signature at the bottom of page 3. My signature that I didn't remember making. "I don't understand," I said. Marcus sat down across from me. "When David needed capital for the second funding round, he used the cabin as collateral. You co-signed the agreement. It's all there, in black and white." I looked at the signature again. It looked like mine. The T in Thomas with that little loop I always made, the way the H connected to the A. But I didn't remember signing anything. When was this? 14 months ago? April 23rd? April 23rd. I'd been in Denver that week, at my sister's. Helen had just had her knee surgery. David had sent me documents to sign before, usually through email. Rental agreements for the business office, tax forms. Had there been something about the cabin? I couldn't remember. "David's debts exceed the business assets," Marcus continued. His voice stayed steady, professional, like he was reading from a script. "The cabin is part of the settlement. I've already arranged for the sale. The closing is in 72 hours. Sale? To a development company. They're paying fair market value. $850,000. $850,000. For the cabin my grandfather built in 1947. For the land where my father taught me to fish, where I taught David to fish, where 3 generations of Hartwells had spent every summer and most Thanksgivings and every Christmas that wasn't too snowed in to reach." Marcus pulled out another paper. "This is your notice to vacate. Legally, I have to give you 72 hours. I'm sorry, Thomas. I know this place means something to you, but business is business." I sat there holding papers that said I'd signed away my family's history. Marcus stood up. "I'll need your keys before you leave," he said. "And anything David left here. Personal effects. You can take those with you. The furniture and fixtures stay with the property." He walked to the door, stopped, turned back. "For what it's worth," he said, "David would have understood. He was a businessman. He knew sometimes you have to make hard choices." Then he left. I sat alone in the cabin with my son's shirts still draped over the chair and a notice to vacate in my hands in 72 hours to figure out how my entire world had been signed away. I didn't cry. I didn't throw things. I didn't call Marcus back and tell him what I thought of his hard choices and his fair market value and his leather folder that cost more than my truck. I just sat there as the afternoon light moved across the floor, across the place where David had taken his first steps, across the corner where we'd built that bookshelf when he was 12 and hit his thumb with the hammer and tried not to cry because he was almost a teenager and thought teenagers didn't cry. Then I stood up. I folded the papers carefully and put them in my own folder. I took David's shirts and his boots and the photo of him and his mother from the mantel. The photo from before the cancer, when she still had her hair and her laugh. I packed my truck in the fading light. 2 duffel bags, a box of memories, my laptop. I didn't hurry. I didn't slam doors. When I started the engine, I looked back at the cabin one more time. The porch David and I had rebuilt 5 years ago. The window boxes that still needed flowers planted. The satellite dish we'd installed so he could work remotely during the summers. Then I drove away. To my sister Helen's place in Denver, 340 miles south. She opened the door and saw my face and didn't ask questions. Just pulled me inside and made coffee and let me sit at her kitchen table in silence for 20 minutes before I could speak. "Helen," I said finally, "I need a favor. Anything. I need the name of that lawyer friend of yours, the one who helped you with Mom's estate." Helen studied my face. What happened? So I told her. About Marcus and the papers and the 72 hours. About David's accident that kept bothering me in ways I couldn't explain. About how the police report said brake failure, but David had just had the brakes serviced 2 weeks before. About the insurance policy I'd found in David's apartment, the one for $2 million with Marcus named as beneficiary. "That's not unusual," Helen said carefully. "Business partners often have life insurance on each other." "For $2 million? If the business valuation justified it." But she was frowning now, the way she did when numbers didn't add up. Helen had been an accountant for 40 years. She knew when something smelled wrong. Her lawyer friend was named Patricia Chen. She agreed to meet me the next morning at her office in downtown Denver. I brought everything. The vacate notice, the collateral agreement, David's insurance policy, the police report from the accident. Patricia spent 40 minutes reading through the documents without speaking. Finally, she looked up. "Mr. Hartwell," she said, "do you remember signing this deed transfer?" "No, because this is either the most convenient timing in the world or something's very wrong here." She pulled out a magnifying glass. Actually pulled out a magnifying glass, like someone from a detective novel. "Examine my signature on the collateral agreement. Have you ever had your signature analyzed?" "No. I know someone, a forensic document examiner. She's testified in federal court. If this signature was forged, she'll be able to tell us." Patricia made a phone call, spoke quietly, hung up and looked at me. "She can see us this afternoon. It'll cost $2,000 for a preliminary analysis. More if we need a full forensic report." $2,000? I thought about the savings account that was supposed to be for retirement, the account that had already taken a hit paying for David's funeral, for the casket and the flowers, and the plot next to his mother. "Do it," I said. The forensic examiner's office was in a strip mall between a nail salon and a tax preparation service. Dr. Sarah Kim was maybe 40, with reading glasses on a chain and hands that moved with careful precision. She photographed my signature from 6 different angles, had me sign my name 20 times on different papers with different pens, compared them all under specialized lighting. 2 hours later, she called us back into her office. "Mr. Hartwell," she said, "this isn't your signature." The words hung in the air like smoke. "What? It's a good forgery." "Very good. But look here." She pulled up images on her computer screen. "Your natural signature has a distinctive hesitation point between the T and the H. It's consistent across every sample you provided. It's the kind of micro-behavior that's almost impossible to replicate. The signature on the deed transfer doesn't have it. Someone traced your signature, probably from another document, and tried to recreate it. But they couldn't capture that hesitation." Patricia leaned forward. "Can you testify to this? In court?" "Absolutely. I'll stake my professional reputation on it. Then we need to file an emergency motion," Patricia said. She was already pulling out her phone. "We can probably get a temporary restraining order to stop the sale. After that?" She paused, looked at me. "Mr. Hartwell, if someone forged your signature to steal your property, that's not just a civil matter. That's fraud. That's potentially multiple felonies." "There's more," I said. Both women looked at me. I pulled out the insurance policy. My son died in a car accident 6 weeks ago. Brake failure. He just had the brakes serviced. Marcus is the beneficiary of a $2 million life insurance policy. And now Marcus is trying to take the cabin that David loved more than anywhere else in the world. Patricia and Dr. Kim exchanged a look. Mr. Hartwell, Patricia said slowly, I think we need to talk to the police. Not the local police in Montana. The FBI. The FBI? If someone killed your son for insurance money and then forged documents to steal federal property, this isn't federal property. But if fraud was committed across state lines, which it was, the FBI has jurisdiction, and they have resources local police don't. She picked up her phone again. I know someone in the Denver field office. Let me make a call. That's how I ended up sitting in a conference room at the FBI field office on Broadway, telling my story to Special Agent Jennifer Oakes. She was maybe 35. With tired eyes and a wedding ring, she kept turning around her finger as she listened. I told her everything. She took notes, asked questions, wanted to see every document. When I finished, she sat back in her chair. Mr. Hartwell, she said, I'm going to be honest with you. What you're describing is serious. If even half of it is true, we're looking at fraud, forgery, and possibly murder. But right now, all we have are suspicions and a forged signature. That's enough to stop the property sale. Maybe enough to bring charges for the fraud. But murder. She shook her head. The Montana police ruled your son's death accidental. To overturn that, we need evidence. Real evidence, not just coincidences. What kind of evidence? The kind that proves Marcus had means and opportunity. The kind that shows he tampered with your son's car, or hired someone to do it. The kind that proves he forged your signature and knew your son was dead before the insurance policy was even filed. How do I get that evidence? Agent Oakes smiled, but it wasn't a happy smile. You don't. We do. But I need you to do something for me first. Anything. I need you to not tell Marcus that you know. I need you to act exactly like a grieving father who's too overwhelmed to fight back. I need you to let him think he's won. For how long? As long as it takes. Could be a week. Could be months. If Marcus thinks he's in the clear, he'll get sloppy. He'll make mistakes. And when he does, we'll be watching. She handed me her card. In the meantime, we'll put a hold on the cabin sale. Federal investigation. Marcus will be angry, but there's nothing he can do about it. And Mr. Hartwell? Yes? Don't do anything stupid. Don't confront him. Don't threaten him. Don't even let him know you're suspicious. Can you do that? I thought about David, about teaching him to tie fishing flies at that kitchen table, about the time he was 8 and fell through the ice on the lake, and I pulled him out and wrapped him in every blanket we owned, about his first startup that failed and how he came to the cabin for a week to figure out what came next, about his funeral, where Marcus gave a eulogy talking about David's vision and drive and how proud he was to be his partner. Yes, I said, I can do that. The next day, Patricia filed an emergency motion in Montana District Court, federal fraud investigation. The judge issued a restraining order. The cabin sale was frozen. I drove back to Montana, back to my truck and my duffel bags. I called Marcus from the road. Marcus, I said, and I made my voice shake just a little. I don't understand what's happening. The FBI called me. They said something about fraud. Silence on the other end. Then Thomas, I don't know what you're talking about. They said the cabin sale is frozen. They said there's an investigation. That's ridiculous. Everything is legitimate. I have the documents right here. I'm sure you do. I'm confused. I'm tired. I can't think straight. I let my voice crack. I'm sorry, Marcus. I know you're just trying to handle David's affairs. I'm sorry I caused trouble. Another silence. Longer this time. It's fine, Thomas. You're grieving. You're not thinking clearly. These government people, they get involved in things they don't understand. It'll get sorted out. Do you think I can stay in the cabin? Just for a little longer? Until everything is settled? Of course. Take all the time you need. But his voice had changed, gone cold underneath the sympathy. Thank you, Marcus. You're a good man. I'm just trying to do right by David's memory. I hung up and drove the last 100 miles to the cabin thinking about that voice. That cold, calculating voice. For 2 weeks, nothing happened. I stayed at the cabin. Went through David's things. His laptop was password protected, but I knew my son. His password was the same one he'd used since high school. Trout Lake 47, for the lake where we used to fish. Inside, I found emails, lots of emails, between David and Marcus about the business. Most of it was normal, meeting notes, financial projections. But then I found the folder marked personal, emails David had never sent, drafts he'd been working on, one dated 3 days before he died. Marcus, I found the discrepancy in the accounts, the phantom expenses that don't match any invoices, the wire transfers to the offshore account. I know what you've been doing. We need to talk. Another one, dated 2 days before the accident. I'm not accusing you yet, but I need answers. If you can explain the missing 200,000, fine. But if you can't, I have to go to the authorities. You know I have to. David had been building a case against his partner, and 2 days later, his brakes failed. I called Agent Oakes, sent her screenshots of everything. She called me back 30 minutes later. Mr. Hartwell, this is good. This establishes motive. Marcus was embezzling from the company. Your son found out. And 2 days later your son died. But it's still circumstantial. We need more. What more do you need? We need to prove Marcus had access to your son's car. We need to prove he had the knowledge to tamper with the brakes. Or we need to prove he hired someone to do it. How do I prove that? You don't. We do. Just sit tight. But sitting tight was harder than I thought. Because the next day, Marcus showed up at the cabin. I was splitting firewood when his rental car pulled up the drive. He got out wearing jeans and a flannel shirt, like he was trying to blend in with the Montana scenery. It didn't work. Thomas, he said. Marcus, this is a surprise. I was in the area. Thought I'd check on you. He looked around, at the cabin, at the trees, at the lake in the distance. This really is a beautiful place. I can see why David loved it. He did, I said. I kept splitting wood. Thunk. The axe bit into pine. Can we talk? Marcus asked. Inside? I wiped my hands on my jeans. Sure. We went inside. I made coffee like I always did. Like I had 100 times when he visited with David. Like everything was normal. Marcus sat at the table. The FBI contacted me, he said. Did they? They're asking questions about the business, about David's insurance policy, about the cabin deed. What kind of questions? Invasive ones, like I'm some kind of criminal. He looked at me over his coffee cup. Thomas, I want you to know something. I cared about David. He was my partner, my friend. I would never do anything to hurt him. I know that, I said. Do you? The question hung between us. I took a sip of coffee. Marcus, I don't understand business the way you and David did. I don't understand venture capital or market valuations or any of that, but I understand people. And I know you were important to my son. Were? Are. Were. I'm still getting used to past tense. Marcus nodded slowly. The FBI, they're just doing their job. When someone dies unexpectedly, and there's money involved, they investigate. It's standard procedure. But Thomas, I need you to know that I'm cooperating fully. I have nothing to hide. That's good. And when this investigation is over, when they realize there's nothing suspicious about David's death or the cabin deed, we can move forward with the sale. I know you love this place. But Thomas, you're 67 years old. You can't maintain this property alone. The sale price could set you up for a comfortable retirement. You could travel, spend time with your sister, build a new life that isn't haunted by memories. He said it like he was doing me a favor, like he was a concerned friend helping me make rational decisions. I looked at him across the table where David used to sit. You're probably right, I said. I'm tired. This has all been too much. Of course it has. You've been through hell. He reached across and patted my hand. His palm was soft, the hand of someone who'd never split wood or changed his own oil or built anything with his own 2 hands. Just let the FBI finish their investigation. Let the lawyers handle the paperwork. You focus on taking care of yourself. He left 20 minutes later. I watched his car disappear down the gravel road. Then I called Agent Oakes. He was here, I said. I know. We had surveillance on the cabin. We recorded the whole conversation. And he's confident. Maybe too confident. But confidence can make people careless. 3 days later, Agent Oakes called me at 6 in the morning. Mr. Hartwell, we found something. Can you come to Denver? I drove straight through. 6 hours down I-90 and I-25, stopping only for gas and bad coffee. Agent Oakes met me at the same field office. But this time, she wasn't alone. There was another agent, older, with gray hair and a Kansas City accent. Mr. Hartwell, this is Special Agent Robert Walsh. He's been running the financial investigation. Agent Walsh had a laptop open. Mr. Hartwell, your son was right. Marcus Chen has been embezzling from their company for 18 months, not just 200,000. Try 800,000. Jesus, it gets better. Or worse, depending on your perspective. Marcus has gambling debts, serious ones. To the kind of people who don't accept payment plans. Agent Oakes jumped in. 3 weeks before your son died, Marcus made a payment to a man named Kyle Brewster. $50,000, wired to an account in Nevada. Who's Kyle Brewster? A former mechanic. Dishonorable discharge from the Army for stealing equipment. Multiple arrests for assault. And get this, he has specialized training in vehicle maintenance and repair. The room went quiet. You're saying Marcus paid this man to sabotage David's car. We're saying it's a strong possibility. Strong enough that we got a warrant for Marcus's financial records, his phone records, and his communications. We're building a case, Mr. Hartwell, but we need your help with one more thing. Anything. Agent Oakes leaned forward. We need you to call Marcus. Tell him you've been thinking about what he said, that you're ready to move forward with the cabin sale, that you want to end the investigation and get on with your life. You want me to lie. We want you to help us catch a murderer. I called Marcus from Agent Oakes' office. She listened on speakerphone. Marcus, I said, it's Thomas. Thomas, how are you? I've been thinking about what you said. About moving forward. About building a new life. Pause. I'm listening. I want to end this FBI investigation. I want to cooperate with the cabin sale. I'm tired of fighting. That's good, Thomas. That's very good. This has been hard on everyone. Can you come to the cabin tomorrow? I want to sign whatever papers you need. I want to be done with all of this. Another pause. Longer. Tomorrow works. I'll bring the documents. We can settle everything. He hung up. Agent Oakes smiled. He took the bait. Now what? Now we finish this. The next morning, I was at the cabin by 7. 2 FBI vans were hidden in the woods half a mile away. I had a microphone smaller than a button clipped inside my collar. Agent Oakes was in my ear through a tiny earpiece. Just act natural, she said. Let him talk. If he confesses, great. If not, we arrest him anyway. We have enough for fraud and embezzlement. The murder charge will come later when we can connect him to Kyle Brewster. Marcus arrived at 9. Same rental car. Same attempt at casual Montana wear that didn't quite work. But this time he had 2 people with him. A woman, maybe 35, pretty, nervous-looking, and a large man with thick arms and a face that said he'd broken more than a few noses in his time. Thomas, Marcus said. This is Rachel, my assistant, and this is Kyle, a friend who's helping with the property evaluation. Kyle. Kyle Brewster, the man Marcus had paid $50,000 to 3 weeks before David died. I felt my chest tighten. Come in, I said. We all went inside. The cabin suddenly felt too small. Rachel and Kyle stood near the door. Marcus set his leather folder on the table. I brought the paperwork. It's straightforward. You sign here, here, and here, and the cabin belongs to me outright. The FBI investigation becomes moot because it's a private transaction between individuals. No fraud, just a legitimate sale. He pushed the papers across the table. I looked at them. What about David's debts? Settled when the cabin transfers. Clean slate. And the insurance money? Marcus's smile didn't change. That goes to paying off the business obligations. It's all legal. I picked up the pen. Thomas, Agent Oakes said in my ear, you don't have to sign anything. We can arrest them right now. But I had a different idea. Marcus, I said. "Before I sign, I need to know something." "What?" "Did you kill my son?" The room went silent. Rachel made a small sound. Kyle shifted his weight. Marcus's smile froze. "What? Did you kill David? Did you pay Kyle here to cut my son's brake lines?" Marcus stood up. "Thomas, you're not well. You're grieving and paranoid, and I found David's emails. The ones where he confronted you about embezzling $800,000. The ones from 2 days before his brakes mysteriously failed." Marcus's face changed. The friendly sympathy vanished. What replaced it was cold and calculating, and absolutely certain of itself. "You can't prove anything." "Actually," I said, "I can." I opened my flannel shirt, showed him the microphone. "The FBI can hear every word you're saying. They've been investigating you for 3 weeks. They know about the embezzlement. They know about Kyle. They know about everything." Marcus looked at the microphone. At me. At Kyle. Something passed between them. Kyle reached behind his back. "Gun!" Agent Oakes shouted in my ear. "Get down!" The cabin door exploded inward. FBI agents poured in from 3 sides. "FBI! Hands up! Hands up now!" Kyle had a gun halfway out. An agent hit him with a tackle that sent them both crashing into the bookshelf David and I had built. Rachel screamed and dropped to the floor. Marcus just stood there, staring at me. "You son of a bitch," he said. "You played me." "No," I said. "I buried my son. That's what you made me do. This is just making sure you pay for it. They arrested all 3 of them. Marcus for fraud, embezzlement, and conspiracy to commit murder. Kyle for the actual murder when they found brake fluid and metal shavings in his garage that matched David's car. Rachel for being an accessory, though she got a deal when she agreed to testify about Marcus's gambling debts and his increasingly desperate behavior in the weeks before David died. The trial took 8 months. I sat in that courtroom every single day, listened to testimony about how Marcus had been stealing from the company almost from the beginning, how David figured it out when he was reviewing the books for a potential investor meeting, how Marcus panicked and reached out to Kyle, who he'd met at an underground casino in Las Vegas, how Kyle drove to Montana and followed David for 3 days, learning his routine, how he cut the brake lines in a parking lot while David was having lunch with clients, how they made it look like corrosion and wear, something that would pass a cursory inspection. But David had just had those brakes serviced. The mechanic testified. He'd replaced the brake pads 2 weeks before David died. The lines were fine, perfect, until Kyle Brewster got to them. The jury deliberated for 6 hours. They came back with guilty verdicts on all counts. Marcus got life without parole. Kyle got 40 years. Rachel got 10, with possibility of parole in 7. After the sentencing, I walked out of that courthouse into October sunshine. Agent Oakes was waiting on the steps. "Mr. Hartwell," she said, "thank you for everything. I just wanted justice for my son. You got it. And you got your cabin back. The cabin. I'd barely thought about it during the trial. But yes, it was mine again. The deed transfer was voided. The fraud charges proved the signature was forged. Everything went back to how it was before Marcus entered our lives. Almost everything. I drove back to Montana, back to the cabin. It was exactly as I'd left it. The bookshelf Kyle had crashed into was broken. I could fix that. The floor where agents had tackled people had scuff marks. I could sand those out. But David wasn't there. Would never be there again. I stood in the doorway and looked at the place we'd built together. The place 3 generations of Hartwells had loved. And I realized something. This cabin wasn't mine to keep. Not anymore. I called a conservation nonprofit the next week. They specialize in preserving wilderness land in Montana, keeping it undeveloped, protecting it for future generations. I met with their director, a woman named Susan, who actually cried when I showed her the property. "Mr. Hartwell," she said, "this is incredible. The lake, the forest, the wildlife corridor. If we could preserve this." "You can," I said. "I'm donating it. All of it. The cabin, the land, the 90 acres my grandfather homesteaded in 1947. That's extremely generous. We could set up an endowment in your family's name. The Hartwell Nature Preserve. No, I said. The David Hartwell Nature Preserve. After my son. He loved this place more than anyone. Susan smiled. The David Hartwell Nature Preserve. I like that. They're building a small education center now, where the old shed used to be. School groups will come. Families. People who want to learn about Montana ecology and wildlife conservation and how to protect the places we love. There's a plaque by the cabin door. The David Hartwell Nature Preserve. Donated by Thomas Hartwell in memory of his son. David believed that some places are too precious to own. They belong to everyone. I visit sometimes. The nonprofit gave me a lifetime pass. I walk the trails David and I used to hike. I sit by the lake where I taught him to fish. Sometimes I imagine I can still hear his laugh echoing off the water. People ask me if I regret it. Giving away $850,000 worth of property. Giving away my family's legacy. No, I tell them. I protected my family's legacy. I made sure my son's memory means something more than just a name on a deed. I made sure the place he loved will be there for other kids to love. Other fathers to teach their sons to fish. Other families to make memories. Because here's what I learned through all of this. Through the grief and the investigation and the trial and the sentencing, land isn't really something you can own. Not truly. We're just temporary custodians of places that existed long before us and will exist long after we're gone. My grandfather homesteaded this land. My father maintained it. I preserved it. David loved it. And now it belongs to everyone. Marcus thought land was about money, about assets and collateral and market value. He was willing to kill for it, willing to destroy lives for $850,000 and an insurance payout. But he was wrong. Land isn't about money. It's about legacy. It's about the stories we tell and the memories we make and the things we leave behind that matter more than any bank account ever could. That's what I told the FBI agent when she asked me how I felt now that it was all over. Justice feels good, I said. But this feels better. Knowing that my son's name is on something that will last. Knowing that families will make memories in the place where we made ours. Knowing that Marcus took David from me, but he couldn't take what David loved. He couldn't destroy what mattered. I sleep better now. Not every night. I still dream about the funeral. About Marcus in his expensive suit telling me I had 72 hours. About signing those papers I never signed. About David's last moments when he realized his brakes weren't working. But I also dream about kids learning to fish in Trout Lake. About biology students identifying plant species on the trails. About families sitting on the porch David and I rebuilt, watching the sunset over mountains that have watched over this land for millions of years. They say revenge is cold, that it doesn't bring back what you've lost. They're right. Catching Marcus didn't bring David back, but it did something else. It proved that silence isn't weakness, that patience isn't surrender, that sometimes the best revenge isn't about destroying your enemy. It's about protecting what they tried to take from you, and making sure it means something bigger than either of you ever imagined. So when people ask me if I got justice for my son, I tell them yes. Yes, I did. And when they ask if it was worth it, I smile and tell them to visit the David Hartwell Nature Preserve. Tell them to walk the trails and fish the lake, and sit on the porch where a father and son once built a life together. Then they'll understand. Some things are worth fighting for. Some legacies are worth protecting. And some sons deserve to be remembered not for how they died, but for how they lived and what they loved. That's justice. That's legacy. That's what I gave my son when I couldn't give him anything else. And every single day, that's enough.